At our family's New Year's gathering on December 30th, my father stood up with his champagne glass, already trembling from too much wine. He locked eyes with me across the crowded table. "All right, everyone. Let's raise our glasses to another year gone," Harold announced, his voice thick with alcohol. "And Riley, sweetheart, when exactly are you planning to own a lakefront property like your sister? Or is renting forever just your life plan now?" The entire room erupted. 20 people laughing at once. My sister Madison tossed her highlighted hair and shot me that familiar triumphant smirk. I placed my glass down carefully, took a breath, and said just loud enough for every single person to hear, "Actually, she doesn't own that lake house the way everyone seems to think." Complete silence. Harold's glass froze halfway to his lips. Madison's face drained of color like someone had pulled a plug. You could have heard a snowflake land on carpet. That was the first moment in 26 years I had ever witnessed my father rendered completely speechless. If you've ever been the family scapegoat while someone else collected all the glory, stay with me until the very end. Trust me, you need to see exactly how this unfolded. Growing up just outside Charleston, South Carolina, our household operated on one unspoken but absolute rule. There was always one star and one understudy. The star was my older sister Madison. The understudy was me. Madison arrived 4 years before I did and immediately commanded attention in every room she entered. She possessed this magnetic, theatrical laugh that made strangers turn around and smile before they even saw who was making the sound. She instinctively knew when to charm, when to sulk, when to throw her arms wide and tell stories that had everyone leaning forward breathlessly. My father Harold worshipped that performance like it was Sunday church. My mother Patricia simply stood behind him, nodding along and clapping on cue. The hierarchy became crystal clear the summer Madison turned 12. Harold rented out the entire neighborhood recreation center for a single Saturday. He brought in a professional DJ, ordered a custom 4-tier cake with real gold leaf decoration, hired photographers, and invited every student from her school, plus half the surrounding streets. There were personalized balloon arrangements, rented lounge furniture, and a frozen treat station running continuously. I was 8 years old. My birthday fell exactly 3 weeks later. I received a plain grocery store cake with plastic decorations and 8 candles. Harold handed me the knife impatiently and muttered, "Hurry up, Riley. Don't overshadow your sister's special weekend." What I didn't know then was that one day, that very same sister would unknowingly become my tenant, and that's when everything changed forever. I blew out my 8 candles alone under the harsh fluorescent kitchen lights, while Madison's friends were still shrieking with joy at her celebration next door. That single afternoon carved my exact position in our family into stone. The pattern repeated itself in countless small but deliberate ways throughout my childhood. Madison received the master bedroom with the bay window and walk-in closet the day we moved into our new house. Even though basic logic said the older child should choose first, Harold's justification was blunt and unapologetic. Madison has more personality. She requires space to express herself. My room was the cramped one at the dead end of the hallway, featuring one tiny window that stared directly into our neighbor's brick exterior wall. I accepted it without complaint. Complaints only earned me one label: jealous. School report cards became another arena for public comparison. Madison brought home mostly B grades with an occasional C in mathematics. Harold threw an elaborate backyard celebration to honor her natural leadership abilities and magnetic social presence. That same semester, I came home with straight A's and perfect attendance. Harold barely glanced at the paper, gave a single distracted nod, and said, "That's expected from you, Riley. Just stay out of trouble." Then he spent the remainder of dinner enthusiastically mapping out Madison's glorious future, as if she were already destined for magazine covers and television interviews. I tested the system exactly once in my life. I was 10 years old. I gathered my courage and asked directly why Madison received elaborate praise for mediocre grades, while my perfect ones earned absolutely nothing. Harold laughed out loud, ruffled my hair roughly enough to sting, and announced to everyone at the table, "Because Madison represents the future of this family, Riley just needs to stay quiet and behave." Patricia pulled me aside afterward, offered a brief hug, and whispered, "He doesn't really mean those things." But his words were already branded into my memory. After that night, I stopped showing anyone my report cards. I stopped requesting anything at all. By middle school, the rules had become permanent and unbreakable. Madison received new outfits every season, the latest smartphone on release day, and an allowance substantial enough to feel like a salary. I wore her hand-me-downs until the stitching came apart, used an ancient flip phone until junior year, and collected $20 weekly for being responsible. But what my family didn't realize was that their constant dismissal was teaching me something invaluable: how to build an empire in complete silence. When I finally received a smartphone of my own, it was Madison's 2-generation-old model with a shattered screen held together by a dollar store case. Harold called this approach building character. Weekends served as the loudest reminder of where I ranked. Madison's friends constantly filled our house with thumping music, stacked pizza boxes, and laughter spilling from every window. Meanwhile, I stayed confined to my room with headphones blocking out the noise. If I ever dared to walk through the living room during one of her gatherings, Harold would snap. "Riley, go find something productive to do. Stop lurking around." So I disappeared. It was simply easier. The Christmas when I was 14 sealed my understanding permanently. Madison unwrapped a brand new laptop and a diamond necklace because she was destined for great things. I opened a $20 department store gift card and received a lecture about the importance of gratitude. I said thank you, retreated to my room, and didn't emerge until January 2nd. That precise moment was when I fully accepted the truth. Competing only made me appear petty. Remaining invisible hurt less than fighting, so I perfected the art of invisibility. I could sit through an entire family dinner without speaking a single word, and nobody found it unusual. I learned to smile appropriately when Harold boasted about Madison's inevitable success. I learned to nod when Patricia called me the reliable one. I discovered that if I never wanted anything publicly, nobody could deny me publicly. The silence began as a child's desperate survival mechanism. By high school, it had hardened into impenetrable armor. Heavy, uncomfortable, but entirely mine. I wore that armor every single day and never once removed it, because in the Harrison household, the spotlight belonged exclusively to Madison, and the shadows were constructed specifically for me. I poured myself into academics with obsessive dedication. Every spare moment went to studying, learning, preparing. While Madison attended parties and collected followers on social media, I was reading programming tutorials at midnight. While she planned her next shopping spree, I was completing online certifications in software development. Nobody noticed. Nobody asked. The invisible daughter was building something in the darkness. Something that would eventually cast a very long shadow of its own. The difference between Madison and me was about to become a canyon, one that would take years to reveal, but only seconds to collapse. When college applications arrived, the gap between Madison and me transformed from a crack into an uncrossable divide. Madison earned acceptance to Clemson University with a partial academic scholarship. Harold and Patricia immediately stepped forward to cover every remaining expense: full tuition, room and board, sorority dues, plus a brand new off-campus apartment in a luxury student complex. They also handed her a credit card with a $5,000 monthly limit and encouraged her to enjoy the experience. Her move-in weekend resembled a professional photo shoot. A new BMW gleamed in the parking lot. Monogrammed bedding adorned her queen-size bed. The family threw a going-away celebration at a country club, complete with an ice sculpture carved into her name. My journey looked nothing like that fairy tale. I enrolled at the local technical college, 20 minutes from home, because community college was essentially free if you hunted down every available scholarship and grant. To cover textbooks, gas, and the small remaining fees, I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. I woke at 4:30 every morning to stock shelves at a retail warehouse on the edge of town. After classes, I delivered food orders through an app until well past midnight. Weekends, I tutored high school students in computer programming for $50 an hour. Cash only. I survived on 4 hours of sleep, instant noodles, and pure stubborn determination, and I still maintained a perfect 4 grade point average. 2 years later, I transferred to UNC Charlotte with another stack of scholarships I had applied for secretly, telling no one in my family about any of it. I graduated in 2020 with a computer science degree and exactly $11,000 in student loan debt. Madison graduated the same spring owing absolutely nothing. She celebrated with a rented yacht party on Lake Norman that cost more than my entire education. Our parents beamed from the dock, taking photographs of their golden child in her designer graduation dress. Nobody asked about my ceremony. I attended alone, shook the dean's hand, and drove myself back to my apartment in the same beat-up car I'd owned since 17. That was just the beginning of the silence I would maintain about money. The real secrets hadn't even started yet, because what happened next would set the stage for the most satisfying revenge I never planned but absolutely delivered. In the middle of the pandemic chaos, when companies were desperately searching for remote software engineers, I landed a mid-level developer position at a rapidly growing financial technology startup based in Austin. Fully remote work. Starting salary: $128,000 annually, plus meaningful company equity that would vest over 4 years. By early 2023, I had been promoted to senior engineer. My total compensation package reached $165,000, with the stock value climbing every quarter. It was the kind of money that transforms lives. But my family never learned the real numbers. Every single time Harold asked what I was earning, I shrugged casually and answered, around 65. Maybe 70,000 on a good year. Remote positions don't pay like they used to. He would grunt, nod as if that confirmed everything he already believed about my limitations, and immediately redirect the conversation back to Madison's latest big opportunity, which never quite materialized, but always sounded impressive. I maintained this deception for two very specific reasons. First, I was genuinely terrified that the moment they discovered the truth, the requests would begin flooding in. Help with the mortgage, a down payment for Madison's future business venture, emergency loans that would never be repaid. Whatever convenient need arose. Second, and honestly more painful to admit, I refused to hand Harold the satisfaction of yet another comparison. I could already hear his voice in my head. See? Riley finally figured things out once she stopped being lazy. I absolutely refused to give him that victory, so I continued living like someone earning $65,000 in Charlotte, North Carolina. I rented a cramped 400-square-foot studio apartment in an aging complex on the outskirts of the city. Paper-thin walls separated me from noisy neighbors. Stained carpet covered the floors. The window air conditioning unit rattled like a dying engine every time it cycled on. My furniture consisted of a mattress directly on the floor, a $30 desk I'd found on Facebook Marketplace, and one plastic lawn chair for additional seating. I still drove the same dented 2009 Toyota Corolla I had purchased at 17 with tutoring savings. The paint had oxidized to a chalky gray. The check engine light had glowed steadily for 3 years. The driver's side window only descended halfway before jamming, but it started every single morning. That was enough. What nobody knew was that every paycheck was building towards something massive, something that would eventually bring my entire family to stunned silence. When I visited home for Christmas or Thanksgiving, I wore the same 3 faded hoodies in heavy rotation and complained about fictional rent increases that nobody ever questioned. Patricia would squeeze my hand sympathetically and murmur, "Things will improve eventually, sweetheart." Harold would shake his head and mutter about young people today lacking any real ambition or hustle. They believed every single word I fed them. Meanwhile, the actual money accumulated in complete silence. Direct deposits landed every 2 weeks like clockwork. Stock units vested on schedule. I maxed out my 401k contribution. I maxed out my Roth IRA. And still, 6 figures sat growing steadily in a high-yield savings account under my name alone. I paid off those $11,000 in student loans within 18 months. I never mentioned it to anyone. The armor of silence I had constructed as a neglected child had evolved dramatically. It wasn't just emotional protection anymore. It was perfect financial camouflage. For those first few years out of college, the camouflage operated flawlessly without a single crack revealing the truth beneath. The winter of 2020 became a turning point I had never dared to imagine out loud. The luxury real estate market around Lake Wylie had frozen solid. Interest rates had spiked unexpectedly. Out-of-state buyers vanished overnight. Listings that once sold within a weekend now sat collecting dust for 6 months or longer. One particular property appeared in my private saved search alerts and refused to leave my thoughts. A 5-bedroom, 5.5-bathroom contemporary waterfront estate on a protected cove. 180 feet of private shoreline. A deep-water dock with a covered boat lift. A 1,200-square-foot rooftop terrace wrapping 3 sides of the structure. Floor-to-ceiling, retractable glass walls facing the sunset. An elevator. A 4-car garage with epoxy floors. An infinity-edge pool that appeared to spill directly into the lake itself. The original asking price was $2,300,000. By mid-December, the owner, a retired surgeon relocating permanently to Florida, had slashed the price to $1,800,000, desperate to unload the property before the January tax deadline. I stared at that listing every night for 2 weeks. Then I made a decision that would change everything. I was about to become the secret owner of the most beautiful house my family had ever seen, and they wouldn't have the slightest clue. On December 27th, I submitted a full-price offer. 40% down in certified funds. 15-year fixed mortgage at the historic pandemic low interest rate. Cash closing within 15 days. Absolutely no contingencies except clear title. The seller accepted within 4 hours. We closed electronically on January 8th. 2021. My personal name never touched a single document. Here's how I made myself invisible. My maternal grandmother, Margaret, had passed away in 2018. Her revocable living trust automatically converted to irrevocable status upon her death, and her will named me as sole successor trustee. I retained an estate planning attorney in Greenville, who drafted a new single-purpose, irrevocable trust. The property was titled Margaret Harrison Irrevocable Asset Trust, 2021, listing my deceased grandmother as grantor and me as trustee. The warranty deed recorded directly to the trust. My name never appeared on the closing statement, the mortgage documents, the title insurance policy, the homeowner's insurance binder, or the county tax records. To every public database in the United States, the owner was a trust named after a woman who had been buried for 3 years. Renovation began the week after closing. I paid cash for every single expense. We demolished the dated brass fixtures and marble countertops, installed 7-inch European white oak flooring throughout every room, replaced all surfaces with honed quartzite in a stunning neutral tone, added matte black hardware and fixtures throughout. I invested in a complete home automation system with hidden speakers and motorized window treatments, upgraded to impact-rated hurricane glass, replaced both HVAC units with high-efficiency systems. The dock was completely rebuilt with maintenance-free composite decking, underwater LED lighting, and a new covered boat lift rated for a 12,000-pound vessel, plus dual jet ski platforms. The pool received a fresh diamond-bright finish and a hidden automatic cover. Total renovation cost $328,000. Paid in 4 wire transfers from the trust's dedicated account. Every contractor signed a brief confidentiality agreement, stating the owner lived overseas and wished to remain anonymous. I visited the construction site exactly twice, both times in a rented vehicle, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses. I paid invoices the same day they arrived and never lingered. By October 2021, the lake house was absolutely flawless and ready for the tenant, who would unknowingly change everything. By autumn of 2021, the house was staged with elegant, neutral furniture and prepared for luxury rental. I onboarded a licensed property manager named Lydia Brooks, who had 15 years of experience handling high-end vacation and residential properties. She managed everything: marketing through private channels, applicant screening, lease preparation and execution, rent collection, maintenance coordination, quarterly property inspections, and all tenant communication. Rent payments went to her management company's account, then swept into the trust's bank account the same business day. Lydia and I never met in person. Not once. All our communications stayed inside an encrypted client portal registered to the trust name. She believed she worked for a discreet family office based in Charleston. She wasn't entirely wrong, she was simply missing one crucial detail about who controlled that office. Back in my everyday life, The camouflage remained absolutely airtight. I still pulled into my parents' driveway in the same deteriorating Corolla with its peeling paint and stubborn warning lights. Harold still asked at every single visit whether I had finally started earning decent money. I still answered with a shrug. Getting closer, Dad. Patricia still pressed folded $20 bills into my palm for gas or groceries, and I always accepted them graciously. Madison still scrolled Pinterest boards filled with lake house inspiration and sighed dramatically about one day living that dream life. None of them possessed the slightest suspicion that the exact property featured in those aspirational screenshots already belonged to a trust I personally controlled. The first full year of ownership proceeded exactly according to plan. Lydia leased the house fully furnished to a relocating pharmaceutical executive for $12,000 monthly on a 2-year term. The mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance premiums, and maintenance expenses were all covered with substantial cash flow remaining. The property appreciated another $280,000 in value simply by existing in a recovering luxury market. I reviewed every monthly photo report Lydia submitted. Fresh orchids on the kitchen island. Shoes aligned neatly by the door. Not a fingerprint visible on the glass railings. I kept my expression completely neutral whenever lake house discussions arose at family gatherings. I nodded along. I said nothing. The secret remained locked tighter than any vault. And I held the only combination. 2 peaceful years passed in that silent rhythm until one ordinary morning when an email arrived that made my heart stop cold. One random Tuesday morning in July 2023. An email notification from Lydia appeared with the subject line, New application. Lake Wiley waterfront. I opened it and felt every molecule of air leave my lungs. Primary applicant. Madison Harrison. Co-applicant. Giselle Fontaine. Combined verifiable annual income. $426,000. Requested lease term. 24 months. Requested move-in date. August 1st. Lydia only marketed the property through exclusive private channels. No public real estate listings. No popular rental websites. No yard sign. She distributed the password-protected property link exclusively to prospects who could document serious financial resources. Madison had obviously gained access through Giselle, whose old Charleston shipping fortune was exactly the type of name that opened every door in South Carolina high society. Their attached cover letter was pure Madison. We're seeking a signature lakefront residence that reflects our personal brand and elevated lifestyle. We will treat this exceptional home like the treasure it truly represents. I stared at my screen for 5 full minutes without moving. Then I typed a single-line response. Approved. Proceed with full lease execution. They moved in exactly 3 weeks later. Within 48 hours, Madison's Instagram account transformed into a full-time lake house promotional campaign. First post. Golden hour drone footage gliding gracefully over the dock. Madison and Giselle lounging on matching chairs with rosé glasses raised toward the camera. Caption. Chapter 30 begins right here. My lake house. My peace. No mention of rent. No mention of a landlord. No mention of any lease agreement. Every photo, video, and story was meticulously staged to scream ownership. Lake life unlocked. Home sweet forever home. Living my absolute truth. The family group chat exploded with celebration. Harold sent rambling voice notes that lasted minutes at a time. Did you see your sister's new place? That dock. That view. That's exactly how winners do it. Patricia forwarded every single photograph with heart-eye emojis and exclamation points. I replied with a simple thumbs up and returned to my laptop. The irony was absolutely exquisite. My sister was paying me $12,000 monthly to pretend she owned my house, and the whole family believed every word of her performance. For the first 18 months, the rent arrived like clockwork. $11,500 on the first of every month, wired directly from Giselle's family trust disbursement account. Lydia's quarterly inspection reports showed the property maintained perfectly. Fresh flowers on the kitchen island. Designer shoes lined neatly by the entrance. Not a single fingerprint smudging the glass railings. Meanwhile, Madison's online presence exploded. She posted constantly. Sunset photos from the rooftop terrace. Morning coffee sessions on the dock. Boat days with influencer friends. wine nights featuring the infinity pool glowing under strategic lighting. Every caption reinforced the ownership fantasy. Grateful for my home every single day. This view belongs to me forever. Built different. Living different. Jackson Holt entered the picture 6 months after move-in. 6'3", muscles sculpted like a fitness advertisement, and twice as loud on social media as Madison herself. He moved in without ever being added to the lease agreement. Lydia flagged the unauthorized occupant in her next report. I instructed her to document everything, but take no action yet. Jackson took the online flexing to another stratosphere. Every time a cousin posted about a new car or vacation, he would throw up a story, with the lake sparkling behind him and text overlay reading, "Stay mad. You'll never reach this level." The arrogance was never subtle. Thanksgiving 2024 delivered the worst display yet. Madison FaceTimed from the rooftop terrace wearing a floor-length white faux fur coat, panning her camera slowly across the lake. Glittering with holiday lights, she had paid $5,000 to have professionally installed. Harold held his phone at maximum volume so our entire dining room could hear her gush about how magical hosting holidays in our forever home truly feels. When the call ended, he looked directly at me across the turkey and announced, "That's what winning looks like, Riley. Maybe someday you'll figure things out." I smiled, said maybe, and started collecting dirty dishes. Inside my mind, a counter was ticking. The moment I had waited for without ever fully admitting it was finally approaching. But first, Madison's carefully constructed fantasy world needed to crumble completely on its own. Then spring 2024 arrived, and everything began falling apart. The April rent payment came 4 days late. May was 12 days late with a flimsy excuse about banking delays. In early June, the relationship between Madison and Giselle imploded in spectacular fashion across every social media platform. Mutual unfollows, deleted couple photos, cryptic stories about snakes in the garden, and fake love masquerading as friendship. By the end of June, the rent was a full month behind. Lydia sent the standard courtesy reminder through proper channels. Madison responded with a 4-paragraph email about unexpected brand partnership delays and temporary cash flow adjustments. July brought only a partial wire of $4,000 and a promise to square everything up next week. August arrived. Nothing. September. Nothing. October. Nothing. The outstanding balance climbed past $48,000. Madison replaced Giselle with Jackson before the bedsheets were cold. He moved in officially now, still never added to any lease documentation. The monthly inspection photographs shifted dramatically overnight. Empty champagne bottles abandoned on the quartzsite island. Muddy boots tracked across the white oak floors. Random influencers taking mirror selfies in the master bathroom at 3 in the morning. Red cup parties spilling onto the rooftop terrace with strangers everywhere. Lydia flagged the unauthorized occupancy and mounting delinquency in every report she submitted. I instructed her to follow standard late fee protocols, but hold off on any formal eviction proceedings. Madison kept posting as if the house was completely paid off. 4th of July fireworks launched from my dock. Labor Day weekend featuring an inflatable unicorn the size of a small car floating in my pool. Halloween party with a catered oyster bar on my lower deck. Christmas 2024. She hired a company to wrap the entire dock and boat lift in synchronized LED light displays. Every caption continued screaming ownership. Grateful for my home every single day. This view is mine forever. Living my best life in my forever place. Jackson's posts grew even more insufferable. Built this empire from nothing. Haters can watch from the cheap seats. The irony burned. The balance owed. $48,400 and counting. The stage for revelation was almost perfectly set. December 30th arrived cold and crystal clear. The old family house outside Charleston was stuffed with 20 people. Parents, aunts, uncles, Harold's closest golf companions, Patricia's book club friends, cousins I hadn't seen since high school graduation. Madison and Jackson arrived dressed in matching cream cashmere outfits, looking like they had stepped directly from a luxury catalog photoshoot. The dining room table had every extension leaf added. White tablecloths covered everything. Too many wine glasses crowded every place setting. The annual prime rib roast centered the table, a tradition that cost more than my first real paycheck. I sat in my usual corner seat, hoodie sleeves pulled over my hands, quiet as always. Harold started drinking at 4 o'clock. By 9:30, he was flushed red, eyes glassy, voice loud enough to rattle the neighbors 3 houses away. He pushed his chair back with a screech, grabbed a spoon, and clinked his wine glass repeatedly until every conversation died completely. "Another year almost finished," he announced to the room. "Some of us absolutely crushed it. Some of us." He paused dramatically. "Well, clearly didn't." He turned and pointed his wine glass directly at me like a weapon. "Riley, 26 years old and still renting some pathetic little apartment. When exactly are you planning to grow up and actually accomplish something with your life?" Laughter rolled around the table in waves. One of Harold's golf friends raised his glass and shouted, "Here, here!" Patricia stared at her plate, nervously twisting her napkin. Madison leaned back in her chair with that familiar, triumphant half-smirk she had perfected over decades. Harold wasn't finished. He swept his arm toward her dramatically. "Look at your sister. Lake house. Private dock. Rooftop parties for 50 people. That's what winning actually looks like. Maybe you should take a few notes for once in your life." Madison tilted her head with practiced false modesty. "Actually, we're planning a complete dock renovation this spring. New composite decking. Built-in lighting. Maybe a second-level bar with a fire pit. It's going to be absolutely incredible." Jackson raised his glass and announced, "To the Queen and her kingdom." More laughter erupted. Someone started a slow clap. Inside my pocket, my phone sat waiting. The proof of everything was one tap away. The room tilted around me as the laughter continued echoing off every wall. I reached slowly into my pocket, pulled out my phone, opened the property management application, and turned the screen so every single person at that table could see clearly. The display showed the official lease agreement. Property owner: Margaret Harrison, Irrevocable Asset Trust 2021. Primary tenant: Madison Harrison. Previous co-tenant: Giselle Fontaine. Removed. Current unauthorized occupant: Jackson Holt. Balance due: $48,400. Account status: 4 months delinquent. I let the screen sit there glowing for 5 full seconds of absolute silence. Then I spoke slow, flat, and completely calm. "This is my house. I purchased it in January 2021. It's held in a trust structure, so my name never appears on any public records. Madison applied to rent it in summer 2023. I personally approved her application. She has lived there for 2.5 years, posted constantly like she owns it, and has not paid rent for the last 4 months. She currently owes me $48,400. I rotated the phone slowly, making absolutely certain every single person at that table could read the glowing red "overdue" status. The room went completely dead. Harold's mouth opened, closed, opened again. His face cycled from drunk red to corpse purple. The wine glass in his hand trembled so violently that a drop splashed onto the white tablecloth. Madison's smirk evaporated instantly. Her eyes filled with tears that spilled down her cheeks in thick mascara rivers. You can't." The words choked off in her throat. Jackson froze with his glass suspended halfway to his lips, eyes bouncing rapidly between my phone screen and my face, clearly waiting for someone to announce this was all an elaborate joke. 40 full seconds of frozen, suffocating silence. Even the antique grandfather clock in the hallway seemed to stop its eternal ticking. I kept my voice perfectly level when I continued. "The lease converted to month-to-month status the moment consistent payments stopped. Under South Carolina law, I can terminate tenancy with 30 days written notice. That notice gets sent tomorrow morning. You have exactly 30 days to either vacate completely or pay every single penny owed." The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard in my entire life. Madison finally found her voice, but it emerged high-pitched and completely broken. "You're my sister. How could you let me believe? How could you let everyone think?" I looked her directly in the eyes without flinching. "You told everyone those things. I never said a single word." Harold slammed his fist on the table with explosive force. Silverware jumped, plates rattled against each other. "You concealed this on purpose," he shouted. You deliberately waited to humiliate your own family on a holiday. I met his furious stare with complete calm. Yes. I waited for exactly the right moment when it would have maximum impact. And you handed me the perfect stage tonight, Dad. Thank you for that. Patricia's hand flew to cover her mouth. One of the golf wives whispered, "Oh my lord." Someone's phone buzzed insistently, but nobody moved to answer it. Madison was openly sobbing now, shoulders shaking uncontrollably. This is cruel. This is actually cruel. Jackson finally lowered his untouched glass. You set her up. That's seriously messed up. I looked at him without blinking. No. She set herself up. I just owned the stage she chose to perform on. The silence stretched another 10 agonizing seconds. I stood up slowly, pushed my chair in, neatly, and walked toward the front door. My footsteps were the only sound in that entire house. Nobody tried to stop me. Nobody spoke a single word. I opened the front door, stepped out into the cold December night air, and pulled it closed behind me with a soft final click. Inside, Madison's crying echoed down the hallway. It lasted far longer than 40 seconds. The morning after, I generated the official notice to vacate at 8:03 a.m. Lydia overnighted it via certified mail with return receipt confirmation. I filed formal eviction proceedings with the county magistrate court that same afternoon. Madison had exactly 31 days remaining in my house. She never paid a single dollar of the outstanding debt. Not 1 cent. Her credit score, which had been 742 when she first moved in, collapsed under the weight of 4 months of missed payments, accumulated late fees, and the collection account I sent the debt to on day 32. By March, her score had plummeted to 572. No reputable landlord in either Carolina would rent to her without a cosigner, plus first and last month's rent in advance. The lake house sold 18 months later for $2.4 million, a $600,000 profit on my original investment. I never told my family what I did with the money. Some secrets are worth keeping forever.